Right guys, let's do this. In this video, I'm going to show you how I've sold $6 million worth of online coaching. And I'm going to do it with probably the worst lighting ever, and while I slowly bake here in the heat in Bali. So you guys better appreciate this one, right? The sun is right up in the middle of the sky at the moment, so no matter where I go, it's baking hot. But if you have ever not felt comfortable with sales, or you think sales is sleazy or whatever the case may be, I'm gonna break that belief for you in this video, right? Because that is holding you back. So first of all, let's get into it. Now, this is all gonna kind of make sense as I go through this video. If you want help with any of this stuff, feel free to just book a call below using the link, right? Not just sales, but also offers, funnel, ads. I'll help you become a savage in all of these areas. Okay, so if you do want help with this stuff, feel free to do that. But let's get into it. Now, first of all, sales is simple, all right? A lot of people think that, you know, sales is complicated, that it's all this psychology, they think it has to be pushy. It really doesn't have to be, but you have to have a process, okay? And it can be extremely simple. Now, learn to sell and you will never be broke. There was a quote from Warren Buffett, or like a question that was asked at a conference or something, I've seen the clip, where they said, if you could go back in time and you could learn one skill, what would the skill be? And he said, I would learn to sell. Because if you are able to sell, you will always be able to make money, okay? Now, this is kind of ironic. The better you are at sales, the less you have to sell. Now, this might sound kind of like counterintuitive, right? But when you get good at sales, you understand how to just follow a simple conversation structure that will do the selling for you. And I'm going to explain all of this in this video, okay? But when you get people who have to like really manipulate and be pushy and stuff like that, a lot of the time the pushiness in sales comes from not actually having a good sales process and not knowing how to sell properly. So you have to pressure people. And this is especially prevalent in kind of cold sales, right? If you're booking calls with like cold outreach, cold email and stuff like that, you kind of have to be a bit pushy because the people aren't kind of primed to buy by the time they speak with you. And again, I'm going to touch on that, all right? But when you actually get good at sales, and I'm going to give you a foundation for this in this video, when you actually get good at sales, you don't really have to sell. Any of the calls that I take with prospects, like I literally don't really sell. I mean, naturally, because I've taken so many calls, like there's an element of like just the way I conduct the call sells naturally, okay? But I'm not trying to push anyone to do anything or specifically sell anything to anyone, all right? And that's because I know what I'm doing, and you'll know what you're doing by the end of this video. And last of all, don't wing it. Don't wing it. Okay, if you find that every single one of your sales calls is different, you're probably winging it, and you shouldn't be. Let me just tell you a quick story about this, right? I left the British Army in 2016. 2017, or probably 2016, I got a job as a delivery driver, okay? And after a few months of driving around in a van for 15 hours a day, yes, 15 hours a day, I realized like this can't be the rest of my life. Like I'm not willing to do this for the rest of my life. So I knew I had to learn skills, and I learned Facebook ads and I learned funnels, right? And I was all self-taught. And I started an agency while I was driving. And what I used to do was I would check my route where I was going to be driving that week. And then I would cold call and cold email, and I would book meetings with businesses that I knew were going to be in the area, like chiropractors, dentists, gyms, and things like that. And then on my breaks, sometimes I would get like a 1 hour break or whatever throughout the day. I'd go to the business and I would park my van round the corner because I didn't want anyone to see that I was driving like a delivery van, okay? And I'd park my van round the corner, and in my van, I'd get changed into a shirt and trousers and shoes. And then I'd go into the business that I'd booked a meeting with, and I'd be speaking to the owner, because they're all small businesses. I'd be speaking to the owner, and I would try and sell them on Facebook ads, funnels, email marketing, whatever, right? But every single meeting I went to, I was like shitting myself, right? Like I was nervous. Every single time I was nervous. And the reason for this was, I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to say. And I had so many of these meetings. And I did close a bunch of clients. You know, I had a bunch of clients that were paying me $1,000 a month, $1,500 a month, okay? But there were far more meetings that I went to that didn't come, where nothing came of it, all right? And it's because I was just winging it. Every single call, I was winging it. And this actually kind of crossed to when I first started online, okay? My first maybe 2 or 3 calls that I took, I was nervous, okay? And the reason for this, when you're winging it, it's because of a lack of competence. You don't know what you're doing. That's why you're winging it. Think about it. If you took Michael Jordan, right? You put Michael Jordan on a football field, he's not going to be confident at all because he can't play football, you know? But you put him on a basketball court and the nerves are gone. He's like, let's go. I've got this, okay? It's exactly the same thing in sales. You don't want to wing it, you want to process. Now, this is extremely important, right? You don't ever want to be taking calls with shit leads. Now, when I say shit leads, what do I mean? People who aren't interested. If someone's not interested in what you're selling, you're not going to get them to buy it. This is why cold email, cold calling, all of these cold outreach on social media, this is why they don't work well at all. And you'll probably have a really low show up rate, you'll have a really low close rate. It's because you're trying to sell someone on something they don't really want, okay? Now, you want to qualify people before the call. So you only want somebody to book a call with you and turn up to the call if they are qualified, all right? Secondly, you want to sell your process before the call. So you want them to get on the call knowing exactly, obviously you need to kind of give them some information on the call, right? But more or less knowing exactly what it is that you do, right? Because then they can get sold on the process and they speak to you about the process, but they know they want the process, all right? And then lastly, you want to build a relationship before the call. So what does this mean? Get them to like you before they book the call. Otherwise, if you don't do these, if you're just booking calls cold, well then you're on the back foot because the person's going to get on the call and you have to get them sold on you first, then you have to get them sold on what you do, then you have to sell them on the offer. Very, very hard to do that in one conversation with a stranger. But if you can do all of these things before the call, honestly, it's a piece of cake. It is a piece of cake. Now, the solution to all of these is a book funnel. If you've watched any of my other videos, you will know I think a book funnel is the only way that you should be building a coaching or consulting business in 2025, all right? Using a book funnel. Don't use anything where people are coming to you cold. What I love about a book funnel is by the time someone goes through your funnel, maybe they buy some other stuff, they read your book, they go through your bonuses, they're already sold both on you and on the process, all right? You wouldn't believe how many people jump on a call with me and they're like, oh, Ryan, man, I love this bit in the book where you were talking about this. Like, it just made perfect sense to me. You know, I have people jump on calls all the time and they're like, Ryan, like I'm already sold on all of this stuff. You just run me through how everything works, but you don't have to sell me on this. That's what you want. That's what you want when people get on calls with you, all right? And a book funnel is the way to do that. Again, if you want my help with a book funnel and the sales process, schedule a call below. I'll just map it all out for you, all right? Now, an important thing to note is when it comes to sales, sales is not about turning no's into yeses. A lot of people think sales is about turning no's into yeses. If someone says no, the answer is no, right? In fact, you don't even want to turn a no into a yes, because then they're going to come in and they're probably going to realize it's not what they wanted or what they need anyway. And then you're going to get nightmare clients. You're going to be refunding and dealing with disputes and all that kind of stuff, all right? So out of all of the calls you take, if you can see this pie chart down at the bottom, out of all of the calls you take, these are rough numbers, but 10% of people are just going to say yes, right? You're going to run them through how everything works. They're going to say, let's go. This is what, in the sales world, this is called a lay down sale. It's where there's zero friction, zero resistance, and they're just like, yeah, I'm in, okay? I'm one of these, by the way. Like if I ever book a call with you, just understand, I'm gonna buy. If I like what I hear, I'm gonna buy straight away, okay? And a lot of successful people, actually, they're just like this. They're a lay down sale. Like they know what they want. They go into the call with the intention of buying if it's what they like. Now, you're gonna get another 10% who just say no. And you shouldn't get too many of these if this is all in place, right? If you're actually nurturing people properly prior to the call. You shouldn't get many of these, but you will get them every now and then. You know, maybe they book the call, they get on the call, and then it's not quite what they thought it was gonna be. And then it's like, okay, cool. Like if someone says to me, no, this just isn't really what I wanna do, it's like, okay, no problem. Stay tuned into the free content and I hope it helps you out. All the best. Or you can point them in a better direction, okay? But your job isn't to turn a no into a yes. Your job is to turn this group, the 80%, who are gonna say maybe, right? Now they might not say maybe, but they might like the process and they'll have an objection or there'll be something they're not sure about, whatever the case may be. That's gonna be the vast majority of people. They're gonna be maybes. Now, a good closer turns maybes into yeses. And this is how you go from a 10% close rate to, let's say, a 50% close rate. It's understanding how to turn maybes into yeses. This is where your success lies when it comes to growing your business, and specifically with sales, with your sales process. Understand how to turn maybes into yeses. And a big part of that is the process that you follow. So if you just guide your eyes up here. Now this is a quote from Jordan Belfort, right? The Wolf of Wall Street. Now he did a lot of scummy things back in the day, if you've ever seen the film, yeah? With Leonardo DiCaprio. You know, he was working on Wall Street. He was very, very, very good at sales. And he was basically scamming people, yeah? Selling like worthless stocks to rich people when they were never gonna make any money, and they're making all the money off these rich people, right? And obviously that's terrible. You know, nowadays he's a sales trainer and he's legit and that kind of thing, but he did some scummy shit back in the day. But one thing you can't deny is he's very, very good at sales. And he said this, he said, every sale is the same. Now, what does he mean by that? Well, yes, you're gonna have conversations with a bunch of different people, maybe in a bunch of different niches, with a bunch of different problems, but every sale is the same. It goes through the same process to actually end up with a sale, okay? And I'm gonna take you through this process. But if you think about point A, so you've got point A over here, and that is like, let's say, the beginning of the conversation, all right? And then you've got point B over here, which is, you know, that's where you make your money. That's where they say yes and they buy. What's the quickest way from point A to point B? It's a straight line, okay? Straight line. So this is what Jordan Belfort called the straight line system. I'm not teaching his system now by any means, okay? That's not what I'm trying to do. Just the A to B concept is what I'm trying to kind of get across here. So from point A to point B, quickest way is a straight line. Now, every sales conversation you have, you just want it to follow that straight line. And there's gonna be a few different things that you need to ask, right? So you might have this thing you need to ask, this thing you need to find out, this thing, right? And you have to just touch on all of those, and naturally it's gonna lead to the sale, a yes or a no, okay? Now, what's gonna happen is, as you have this conversation, the prospect is gonna guide you off of this line, okay? If you can't see that well, zoom in, get over it, right? But they're gonna guide you off this line by asking you a bunch of random questions. Now, it's your job to make sure that you bring it back to the straight line, and then you continue the conversation, then they're gonna ask you something else, and you bring it back. You continue the conversation, and you wanna end up at point B. Now you can see these dotted lines here, right? there will be points, if you're not an experienced salesperson, if you don't know what I'm about to show you, there will be points where they take you off the straight line, and if you go past this point, you've lost the sale. Okay? This was me. Remember what I said before when I was winging it? This was me. I'd start showing a prospect something, they'd ask question after question after question after question after question. You've lost the sale, all right? You want to be the one controlling the conversation, all right? And prospects throughout the call, they can ask questions. That's fine, they're going to ask questions, and you can elaborate and you can answer those questions, but you always want to bring them back to the straight line, okay? And if you do that, you're going to close a bunch of sales. Now, when I say every call is the same, let me just run you through this process, and I can tell you right now, every single call that I take follows this process. It's just built into me now. You know, I don't even really think about it. I just know these are the things that I have to find out when I speak to someone, and it naturally leads to a sale. It leads to a yes or a no, okay? So, once you get on a call with someone, remember they should be pre-nurtured. First thing you want to do, step one, just build rapport, right? Don't get on a call like a weirdo and just start asking them questions about their business the moment they jump on the call, right? Someone jumps on, I say, yeah, what's going on? They say, where are you? I say, I'm in Bali. Look, oh my God, look at this, right? I've screwed that now because I've ruined the camera position. Yeah, you know, they jump on, oh, whereabouts you based? Oh, nice, yeah, whereabouts is that? Bloody, 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 blah, okay? Now, once you've built a little bit of rapport, this should only take 30 seconds, maybe a minute, all right? Then what you want to do, second step, is you want to frame the call. So I say, oh, okay, good stuff. So, look, let's dive in, let's make the most of the time. What's probably best is if we just kind of dive into your business, right? Figure out exactly what you're trying to do, where you're trying to go. You know, I can kind of gauge whether XYZ method can work for you or not. Obviously, if it can, we can have a chat about, you know, potentially working together. If not, I can point you in the right direction. Does that sound good? So you frame the call, you said, here's how the call is going to go. And they'll say, yep, cool. So now what you want to do, step 3, you want to find out why they booked. What was it that made you book the call today? Now, the reason you want to ask this, all right, is because the reason why they booked the call is the same reason why they will buy from you, right? Like the psychology is the same. When they booked the call, it's because there's something they want, yeah? And then if they say yes to you and they invest in your program at the end, it's because there's something they want. It's probably gonna be the same thing, right? So you wanna find out why they booked the call. And they might say, well, I'm trying to grow my business, but it's just not gaining any traction. I've been doing bloody, bloody, blah, and it's just not working. So I went through your book, the $1 Million Book Method, and it sounds like it makes sense, okay? Okay, great. After that, you wanna go on to goals, all right? Like, what is it specifically that you're trying to achieve? So find out specifically what it is they want. This is gonna vary depending on your niche. For me, it might be like, how much revenue do you wanna make? How many clients do you wanna make? Do you wanna get, okay? From here, you can elaborate and you can go a little bit further. So once they say, oh, I'd love to make 20 grand a month, you can say, okay, cool. And then you can say, you know, once you hit 20 grand a month, what's the goal then? Because, you know, you're not just gonna stop at 20K, right? Like, that's a great goal, but there must be a bigger goal, right? And you wanna get them thinking bigger. You wanna find out what are they really trying to achieve, you know? And then they might say, you know, I don't know, well, my big goal really is to start this institution where I help people from impoverished families start businesses, right? Oh, why is that? Oh, it's because I grew up broke. Now I'm a successful business person and I want to give other people the same opportunity, right? They're going to get way deeper into it. Then you can find out what the actual goal is, yeah? Because no one's goal, no one's dream in life is to make 10 grand a month or 20 grand a month. It might not even be a money goal, okay? By the way, apologies guys if you can see sweat, because I am dripping right now, okay? Like I said at the start, You better be grateful. Make sure you're taking notes, right? Make this sweat worth it for me. So once you find out what it is they really want to do, then you want to go on to challenges, right? So you say, okay, cool. So let's just say your initial goal is 20 grand a month, right? Like, what is it that's stopping you from getting there right now? And they'll tell you, oh, I just feel like everything's messy. Like I don't have a funnel. Like I don't have a proper system. You know, I'm booking some calls, but people are like really cold or they're not closing. Okay, great. Find out the challenges. And along this kind of vein, what you can also ask is, what else have you tried? What else have you tried? Find out what they're doing right now, because you can tie this into why your method works better. Okay? So then find out everything they're struggling with, everything they need help with. And then what you want to do is, a lot of people don't actually teach this step, but this is a very good step. You want to find out, when do you want to hit your goal? So if they say their goal is 20 grand a month, cool. When are you looking to hit that 20 grand? And what you want to do here is you want to gauge for urgency. So if they say, I'm thinking like in the next 3 years, to me, that's a massive red flag. Like they've just gauged that their thinking is small. It's not that urgent, right? So it's already a red flag to me. Whereas if they say, let's say they're at 5 grand a month, they want to hit 20 grand a month. And I say, when do you want to do it? And they're like, I think I can get that done in like the next 3 months. I would say, okay, sweet. You can do it in the next 3 months. It's going to require action. You know, it's going to require speed, but you can definitely get it done. So that's a green flag, right? Is when people actually want to achieve what it is they're speaking to you about achieving, okay? Now, once you've gauged for urgency, step 7, I like to just, this is kind of a bit of a way of transitioning into the pitch, which I'll get on in a moment. But number 7, I'll say, cool, I mean, like I like your niche, I like what you're trying to do, you know I can help. Is there anything else that we haven't touched on that you want to touch on? Right? And then they might just have a couple of questions, you know, how does this work? Or like, do you help with X, Y, Z? They'll ask you a bunch of, what's going to happen is they're going to ask you a bunch of questions that they might have asked anyway at the end. So you'd rather get them out of the way now, okay? And they might ask you a couple of questions and you can answer those questions. And when they're like, okay, yeah, sweet, cool. Then we transition to the pitch. Now, where a lot of people go wrong, especially if you don't have much sales experience, is they go from this where, you know, you're just having a chat and you're finding out what they do, finding out what they need help with, and then they just start pitching a product. And this just creates like friction in the conversation. You know, the person's like turned off, their guard comes up and they're like, whoa, like we've just gone from chatting and now I'm being sold to, right? So when I transition to the pitch, what I always do is I ask for their permission to run them through how I can help. So the way that I say that is, okay, cool. I mean, we've been over everything. What I'll often say is, you know, I mean, first of all, like, do you want help? Right? I'll actually ask them that. Because sometimes they'll be like, yeah, maybe, you know, like I could maybe figure it out myself, but you know, what have you got? Again, to me, that's a red flag, right? I'm gauging again for commitment here. So if I say, first of all, like, you know, do you want my help with this? And they're like, yeah, for sure. That's why I'm on the call. Okay, great. And then I will say, well, you know, if you want, I'll share my screen. I'll kind of run you through how everything works on our end. And we can just take it from there. And they'll be like, yeah, cool. So they've just given you permission to pitch. Now you're going to share your thing with them and it's not going to be uncomfortable, right? They want to see. So then what you want to do is share your offer doc, which I don't have to hand at the moment. I'm not on my laptop, okay? But you want to have a document that runs through your whole offer. Again, if you want help with this, schedule a call below. I'll help you with this. I'll literally just give you one that me and my clients use. I'll show you exactly how to do this. But then you run through your offer, okay? And what you want to do is, as you run through your offer, you want to tie challenges slash objections, I hope you can see this, I can see on the screen that's absolutely tiny. You want to tie challenges and objections into the way you pitch. So let me give you an example. Let's say a prospect says to me, you know, like I've been running ads and I've just been wasting a ton of money, like running ads to this free lead magnet. At this stage, right? The challenges stage. I'll remember they said that earlier. You can write it down. I would recommend writing it down. I have a supercomputer as a brain, so I remember these things. No, I'm joking. I'm not that arrogant, but I've taken so many of these calls. I just remember exactly what someone struggles with. But then when you get to this point, I would say, okay, so we're going to do this, this, this. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to do your ads, right? But remember earlier, you said you're wasting a bunch of money on ads, running it to a free lead magnet. I'm going to show you a way, basically, of running ads. You can start with $10 a day, and then we run them to a paid product so that money is coming back in. And then only when that money is coming back in, then we start to ramp it up from $10 a day, so you don't have to risk any money. Does that make sense? Okay? So I've kind of overcome that fear of advertising in the way that I explain how I'm going to help. And you can do this for anything. Like, I have a way of kind of pitching my offer, and it's always the same offer. But I'm able to pitch my offer if someone is struggling with their price point, if they're struggling with their funnel, if they're struggling with tech, if they're struggling with ads, if they're struggling with sales, any of this stuff, okay? I have a way that I can tie it into that. So then what you want to do after that, you explain exactly what the process looks like. I'm going to help you with this and this and this and this. Then you want to explain the deliverables. So that is just, what do they get? And this is very, very simple. You might say, okay, so first of all, I'm going to grant you access to a training that's going to run you through the whole system. Then we're going to do a coaching call once a week to do blah, blah, blah. And you're also going to get my personal phone number so that as you're executing this, if you have problems with anything at all, you can literally just give me a shout, right? That's all you have to do when you explain the deliverables, right? Just explain what they get. Now at this point, you want to ensure they're happy. So here's how I would say this. I would say, okay, cool. So I mean, we could chat about investment and that sort of thing, but with regards to the process that I've just run through, how does that sound? Does that ultimately feel like what can get you to 20 grand a month? And again, here I'm gauging for conviction. I'm listening for conviction. And you want to hear, yeah, 100%. That sounds like exactly what I need. Okay, fantastic. Now we can talk about investment. If you say, does that ultimately feel like what can get you to X, Y, Z? And they say, yeah, I think it could. There's doubt there. And you want to address that before you move on. So I would say, I would just hit that head on, right? I would say, sounds like there's a little bit of doubt there, you know? Like what's going on? What is it, with regards to what we've spoken about, what is it that's kind of like holding you back? And they'll probably just tell you, okay? Anyway, you want to make sure that they're absolutely happy with everything before you move on, okay? So they might address something they're not happy with, you address it, and you say, we good, like you happy with the process? Because at the end of the day, if I'm going to work with someone, I'm going to be there right next to you, you know, making sure that if we do this, we do it properly. So I just want to make sure you're happy with the process. So is there anything at all that you're not happy with? And they'll be like, no, sounds good. Then you can move on. I'll say, cool. You want to chat about the investment? They'll say, yeah, sure. And you can say, okay, so for the 3 months and the X calls and the training, blah, 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 the investment is just $3,000, for example, $5,000, $10,000, whatever, okay? At this point, you're gonna get a yes or a no. What you'll get a lot of the time is some kind of objection. Now, I didn't have a lot of room on here without zooming out so far that you can't see anything. So I can't go deep on objections in this training. However, with objections, you want to learn how to handle them. I teach all of my clients how to handle every objection, word for word. If they say it costs too much, you want to overcome the cost objection. If they say I need to speak to my partner, you need to overcome the partner objection. If they say I'm short on time, you need to overcome the time objection, right? If it's a logistics issue, you need to overcome that. I'm not going to get into those on this video. I can do another video another time. Or, like I said, if you want help with this stuff, just schedule a call. But guys, that's it, all right? Just follow this, you will crush it, all right? You'll never get on a sales call again thinking, what do I say? Just winging it. Remember, like I said, don't wing it. And use a book funnel, right? You wanna use a book funnel because what this ensures is that you will have this conversation with the best quality leads who already know you and trust you, and they know your process and they know they want your process. And it's just gonna make the whole thing way easier. Anyway, I need to go in now and I need to have a shower because I'm absolutely boiling. Okay, but again, guys, if you want help with any of this stuff, book funnel, offer, sales, ads, funnels, all that kind of thing, schedule a call below. I'll map it all out for you. We'll get it all in place, all right? Hope you've enjoyed this one. I'll catch you on the next one.